Hi, and thank you for tuning into this podcast. My name is Shay Ryan Douglas, and in this series, we explore community connection, optimal human potential, and transformational collective growth through inspiring conversations with a diverse range of people who are working towards a positive change in the world. I hope you enjoy this episode today, and if you would please take the time to like, share, and subscribe, we would greatly appreciate that. And I hope you enjoy. G'day folks, my name's Shay Ryan Douglas, and today I've got a very special guest for our podcast. His name is Tristan. He's from Attunement Therapy, and he is diving deep into a wonderful world of the plant medicines and sharing this magic with the world, which I believe we could all do with right now. We're living in really interesting times, and it's actually an incredible time to be alive, and some of the work that you bring into the world is really, really potent, but really, really powerful too. So I'm curious, first off, thank you for taking the time out of your travels to be here. I've heard some interesting stories of your travels up the East Coast with Sunday Islands, and we had the chance to meet just up the road on the beach. It was really lovely in a teepee, got to share everybody's story, and I'm curious to hear if you're open to share with the listeners kind of a little bit about yourself with the Attunement Therapy. And your story to bring into this place where you're sharing the magic of the plant medicines with the world.
Yeah, well, I'm from New Zealand. It's a whole other country. And I actually moved up here when I was 18 to Port Douglas. Yes, I've done about 5 winters up there. A lot of my mates actually went to university and stuff like that. Straight out of high school, going to uni, getting a economics degree, commerce degree, and all kinds of things, all kinds of degrees. And I actually started dabbling with psychedelics from about age 15, and I straight away kind of looked at my education at school with a totally different perspective, where there's a lot of pressure and almost quite a threatening environment, like go to university or you're going to end up working at a petrol station, and it seemed like almost like our school principal was being told what to say by the government or by universities, and then you go get this crazy student loan and then pay it off for ages, and just nothing, all of a sudden things didn't add up, and then the idea that you're supposed to know what you're going to want to do for the rest of your life and go get a degree in it when you're 18. And to me that's like, well, how do we know enough about ourselves and what we're interested in at that age? And also, and as time went on, I interacted with people who'd gotten a degree and then realised they weren't even interested in that. And you've got the degree and the student loan, and then they go work in a cafe. It's like, I don't even like a commerce, or something like this. Yeah. So I could see quite early on that I made the right decision not to go to university and to actually just learn from life experiences. And from about age 20, I started getting really, really interested in basically helping people who've got trauma, people who have different psychological issues, and started studying trauma therapy and started helping people as a kind of basically a freestyle therapist, in coaching and counselling and stuff like that. And so my education expanded, especially with working with people, but my main areas were really like trauma recovery and quantum medicine, cell biology, epigenetics. Even just doing coaching sessions with people, even sexuality stuff, people just have fundamental basic sexuality questions or relationship questions, but we can just talk about it in a matter-of-fact way. Like a lot of people aren't used to, particularly men, talking about things in a free way. Like someone would come talk to me about erectile dysfunction or something like that, or pornography addiction. We just talk about it, And so, working with people like that more and more. And my time, I was also working extensively with plant medicines, and more getting involved in ceremonies for the last dozen years or so, and working with different teachers and stuff like that. And the plants started to, give me little ideas, and also working with people started getting little ideas, and did more and more research, particularly Dr. Gabor Mate out of Vancouver. His books around addiction, his books around ADD, a lot of child brain development stuff, people like Robin Grill, Heart to Heart Parenting from Mullumbimby, New South Wales, and started to catch on to so much of trauma in people comes from other people, like things done to them, especially when they're children, when the brain's developing. That's the first 18 years of life. Or things not done. All right, this is where trauma is being experienced by the adult and all kinds of symptoms, because of something not done in their childhood. And this almost applies to having healthy touch relationships, being held enough, you know. And look, and also studying cultures around the world that don't have these problems, where the children are, you know, for the first 2 years, they're on someone's body, you know, they're always there, always, you know, the baby or the toddler knows someone's looking after them. And in our culture, we have, you know, most of us as adults at the moment, we're exposed to controlled crying as a normal parenting practice. You know, the baby is taught to cry themselves to sleep, which means as during child brain development, that means as an adult, when we get into a crisis, our solution to the crisis is resignation. Because when you were crying as a little kid, no one came. So you automatically think, well, no one's going to help me. So you're just kind of like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. And so, yeah, I mean, I've gotten to the point where I just, you know, noticed touch was such a thing. And then a therapist friend in Melbourne approached me and said, oh, here you're talking about this touch thing. I was like, yeah, I've already told a few people. She's like, just let's do it. And so I basically wrote, through all my research, I just wrote a practitioner training manual and drafted the technique, and she started trialing it in Melbourne. And
she's a psychologist.
She's like a singing teacher, yoga teacher, counselor, coach, you know. And she just felt really also intuitively drawn to, her name's Lauren Zuckerman, really drawn to holding people, you know. And so was I. And then so all of the things I predicted were going to happen in sessions happened and more. And straight away we saw that we're actually onto something really, really incredible, because we're actually getting what we'd say like almost like an ayahuasca-like effect from someone being held. Nice. Okay, and so what does that mean? You know, what's an ayahuasca-like effect? So an ayahuasca-like effect, you know, it's like basically we could call it a holotropic effect. Or, you know, we can start to speculate that there's DMT involved. And so when people say do holotropic breath work or rhythmic dancing or fasting, sometimes they have a holotropic effect where they experience something from their childhood or a family member. Another time, another place, they have an experience in consciousness. And often these are to do with what I call automatic somatics, where the body's taken to an issue you need to look at and let go of, you know, complete the loop, you know, so it's done. So, you know, an issue might be causing you PTSD, maybe you had a car accident or one of your parents left you when you were a kid. And you go back and you look at it and you review it and you maybe come to peace with it. And so attunement therapy is where you go to a practitioner and essentially they hold you for about 90 minutes where you're listening to their heartbeat. And what this does is neurologically, once they chill out, a lot of people, you know, I hold a lot of people and say a whole lot of women who have never been held by a male where he hasn't hit on her or hurt her. So all I have to do is not take advantage of her or hurt her, you know. It's pretty simple. And when they start to drop into the fact that they are safe and the sympathetic nervous system turns off, that's a fight or flight, turns off. It's like, because a lot of people associate touch with danger.
Yeah, wow.
You know, and so when the danger keeps on not arriving, the sympathetic nervous system starts to turn off. And they go parasympathetic, and this is very interesting. Because when you're holding someone, they go parasympathetic. And if you follow, you know, Bruce Lipton's work, especially, the blood vessels in the viscera start to open, and the oxygenated blood from the arms and legs starts to actually fall back into the viscera, right? And that's where all the rejuvenation, all the rebuilding, all the cleansing, all the sort of good things that need to happen in the gut. Yeah. And you can feel the person actually get heavier because all the blood's draining back in. And their breathing goes very, very quiet, and their heart rate slows right down, and they go into a very natural, deep resting state. And from the results we're getting and the testimonies we're getting, we are thinking that there's also a release of DMT in many cases, where people are going on a natural healing journey into their timeline, where the unconscious intelligence in the body is taking them to the priority issue they need to review and look at and let go of. And we're also working with external regulation. This is where, you know, when sometimes you're upset, you might feel like you need to cry, but you can't. Sometimes people feel a weight in their chest, and someone gives you a hug and you start crying, you know? And you don't choose to. You don't go, okay, I'm getting a hug, great opportunity to cry. Here we go, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to cry. It's autonomic, it's automatic. The nervous system is automatically metabolizing emotion out of the autonomic nervous system so that it doesn't turn into a sickness process. The body knows how to do this. But our most difficult emotions, we need external regulation. That means we need contact, preferably physical contact, or a proximity with someone else. And then that gives the body permission to cry and permission to go there because we feel like someone's looking out for us.
Yeah, nice.
This means that during these sessions as well, sometimes there's a lot of crying or almost shaking, like the body goes into a metabolization of trapped energy. Some people, cry for quite a long time. But the 90-minute session runs a natural course in the body. We've realized that there's a natural cycle of self-healing in the body. It's as natural as the time between going to the toilet or time going to sleep or, when you're hungry. There's also a natural catharsis, resting, reset cycle. Where in about 90 minutes, the person sort of wakes back up and they're ready to get up and do the next thing or have a sandwich or something or go to the loo. So we're working with this natural cycle. And we also work with post-hypnotic suggestion where we say really beautiful things to them when they're in that deep state, like, we're all so happy you're here, everything's going to be okay, or you're amazing, whatever. We try and sculpt when I'm training practitioners, we try and help them understand how to sculpt these sort of affirmations that are appropriate to that person's story or process.
Just to kind of tapping into their subconscious brain.
That's
and
right.
those programs.
That's right, yeah. We're like basically speaking into the subconscious and rewriting the tape.
Yeah.
And also towards the end of the session, we also sing to them. And there's a beautiful element here where there's a nerve in the ear that links to the parasympathetic and activates the parasympathetic more. And all of this technique is based on how you treat babies, but we apply it to adults. So you got a crying baby, and they're crying. They're like, what do you do? And you start singing, they stop crying. It's because of this. So we sing kind of lullaby-like things, stuff like that. And we help people get into a really restful state. But it also rewrites the program with associating touch with safety.
Nice.
For a man or a woman, for example, who's got sexual dysfunction, generally this is because of stress associated with touch or performance pressure. This can really help that be alleviated, where you start to associate touch with safety. Wow. There are so many different things that can take place in sessions, but it's hard to generalize. But what we're doing here is we're creating the opposite to a state of stress in the body, which is incredible for immunity or any kind of injury recovery, all kinds of things in the body. It's an immensely healthy practice, and neurologically it's fantastic because, for example, if someone's addicted to methamphetamine, it helps detox the brain. It helps maybe even look at the issue back in time of what's going on, why they're addicted. Many people are addicted to amphetamines. It's because they have ADD. And then a lot of people have ADD because they didn't have their touch needs met or their attunement needs met. Attunement means sharing of emotional spaces during childhood.
Nice.
So the prefrontal cortex doesn't get developed properly. A lot of what I'm saying here is, some Bruce Lipton stuff, Joe Dispenza stuff, Gabor Mate stuff. And so using all the information of these incredible doctors and researchers, I've made a simple, easy to learn, practical, common sense healing modality that really, really works, and it's easy to learn. So I'm teaching all over the world now, and I'll just finish on that. So if someone's addicted, it also helps detox the brain. So when the brain relaxes and goes parasympathetic,
the thoughts and the ideas and the visions and
chemically, mechanistically detox, which means that when the brain goes parasympathetic, any toxins in the brain, and remember as well, pharmaceutical medications are all treated like a toxin in the brain. The brain wants to come back to homeostasis by getting rid of the toxins, but it can't because you're putting them in every day. And if you're stressed too, that means the microcirculation in the brain is very constricted because of stress hormones, things like norepinephrine, cortisol, and adrenaline. That's why they put norepinephrine in a syringe and anaesthetic before they... You get a mole cut out, they'll put that painkiller, but there's norepinephrine in there so you don't bleed because it makes the capillaries shut. So we get these stress hormones out of the brain because they're so relaxed. The capillaries open and the brain is allowed to detox. So in one session, in 90 minutes, we've managed to basically eliminate all of the symptoms of antipsychotic medication in 90 minutes by giving the brain the circumstances it needs to detox. Now this is, it's hard to get, touch is hard to put under the microscope. How do you study touch? But with the touch and with the safe space, we're creating very, very special mechanistic anomalies in the body through touch. That's why mainstream medicine and mainstream scientific dogma is more mechanistic, or they work with Newtonian mechanics or billiard ball physics.
Physical,
things they can see, drugs and
makes sense
surgery,
of,
things they can see. So yeah, it's pretty amazing working with the invisible, but creating incredible physical and psychological results.
Amazing. Sounds like an epic therapy, man.
Yeah.
It seems so, what's coming out in the world with some of these leading thought leaders and scientists, and the research to back it up. It's not just like this idea that they're putting out there. These are scientists who've studied this for their life, and they're coming up with these profound findings and knowledge. How long do you think that till that's really integrated in the mainstream as a base question? But before I get into that, it seems that the world is kind of at this hyper stressful state, as a very basic example, or a lot of people addicted, a lot of people committing suicide, or people just feeling lonely and lost in the world. And the attunement therapy is really wonderful, it sounds, because it's kind of supplementing, or it might seem like an alternative to the mainstream medicine, or these, the pharmaceutical drugs that they give you, and which goes in the opposite direction of what you're trying to achieve with the therapy. But is there, just to kind of segue into more of the plant medicine stuff, is there a kind of an experience that the plant medicines are needed for, or can everything be resolved and healed and transmuted through this kind of therapy? Or is there specific things that the plant medicines can assist with that can help people have that in an instant? Or how does it work? What's your kind of...
Yeah, man. Good question. Questions. So, things like attunement therapy is written as a mainstream medical touch-based system.
Yeah.
Okay,
Love that.
That means that it's accessible for the most skeptic scientific mind.
Yeah.
The research is already out there; it's already done. We're getting more and more data as well with our exact technique. But as Dr. Gabor Mate says, we don't need to do more research.
Yeah.
We don't need to fund more research. As what we need to do is apply what we've learned.
Yeah.
And his thing is just treating kids better, treat babies better, support parents, support single parents. And it's like, that's where the problems come from that causing these addictions and suicide and all these traumas and stuff like that. We know that these early childhood events are what are creating a sick population or a stressed population, Yeah. So now plant medicines and therapy and all this kind of thing, no one actually needs plant medicines. It's not saying you have to do this or you have to do that, it's a free world, but these plants are available. Yeah. When it comes to healing or learning, some plant medicines are the most proficient way of getting there, And so, attunement therapy is cool in the sense that, a lot of the same results can happen where people have massive epiphanies or realizations, almost like something comes through, like information. And you can speculate where this information comes from, for the rest of your life. It could be Akashic, it could be a higher self, it could be your future self, it could be a past self, ancestor, someone else, a teacher, who knows. But things, when the body's in the right state of listening, things come through. Yeah. Now, so plant medicines, for example.
Seems to be a bit of a slingshot straight to it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends it also depends on what the intention is or what someone's trying to go through. Yeah. Some people really need a big wake-up call when it comes to what they're doing in their lifestyle. That's why some people go to a plant medicine retreat, go to South America, and they come back home and they're like selling insurance, and living in a high-rise, and they quit their job and they leave the city. Yeah. They have a complete, wow, this is my whole lifestyle, the people I'm hanging out with, the person I'm married to, my boss at work, what I'm putting my time into, my mind into, what I'm saying is not coherent with a pro-life person. And so people are just getting their lives turned upside down, and that's almost like that wake-up call. People do the same thing when they have a near-death experience sometimes. They're like, whoa, I nearly died, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? And so sometimes people have a pretty big experience, say with ayahuasca, for example, and it's like they think they're going to die. And ayahuasca is completely safe, but they still go through the state of consciousness of, oh my God, maybe I'm going to die. Other plant medicines or animal medicines can do this as well, especially like bufo, the 5-MeO-DMT from Mexico, from the toad, can also produce this, near-death experience, but these plants are very safe to use. They all have different, styles of integration. Bufo is, like, for example, it's also not for everyone. So like 5-MeO DMT in particular in high dosage, you become the whole universe, everywhere, any, when, through time and space. I am everything, okay? I'm a light particle, and light particles are known to also, be in superposition, be everywhere at once, And so in that state of consciousness, I am everything. It means that the fundamental anxiety of death, which is with most people all the time, is gone. You come back to your body and you're like, whoa, I'm back in my body, but I'm also everything. That could be, and then you go back to the insurance office the next day. That can be difficult to integrate. For some people, get a bit stressed because they are here and there. And in that sense that there's different types of people out there psychologically, and to say that all the different plant medicines are appropriate for everyone I don't think that's wise. And then this is where things can go wrong, So be very mindful in what you feel called to, or if you feel maybe pressured or anything like that, just to make good, responsible decisions around what you're doing with your mind. Yeah, like plant medicines as well, there's a transmission. I know some people have learned a lot just by having cactuses in their house or in their garden, just having these plants around, I mostly work with cactuses. I've been working with cactuses since I was 10 years old. And just having them around, I thought I was cultivating them. They're cultivating me. I just realized that, I was like, you guys have been like growing me, fertilizing me. Yeah, it's pretty interesting,
That's awesome. And one question on that as well, like something that I find really admirable in what you do and with the plant medicines is incorporating this element of ceremony. Because as a young boy coming of age, I realize now that I had subconsciously been attracted to going to all of these parties and taking all these recreational drugs and then getting into the psychedelics and then having these kind of really wild experiences that was sometimes a little bit traumatic in a sense that I wasn't prepared for.
Because of where you were, let's say.
Exactly. And so what I really love is the respect that you give the plants, and maybe you could touch on the importance of having a really intentional sacred ceremony when diving into these things. Yeah,
and we all are attracted to ceremony and these sorts of traditions. And there's some people are lucky enough to have a cultural lineage of ceremony in their genetic line. People who are living in the South Pacific, or people, traditional people of Australia, Aboriginal people of Australia, or the First Nations people in Canada, United States, all down through South America, where they have a strong lineage of ceremony that hasn't been basically eradicated through a conquering system. So, if you look at the stolen generation system, which was mainly applied, this was designed in Westminster in London. This was mainly applied in British Columbia and in Australia, where you essentially eradicated generation. So all of the information and knowledge is just basically taken away. And this is what causes massive amount of suffering and displacement and addiction in these cultures. Here's a download I got recently during a San Pedro ceremony where the plant explained to me and said, well, actually, you're the first stolen generation. What? Christian church. It's coming to Europe. The Gnostic people in Europe, Gnostic, gnosis, knowing. The people have been worshipping the earth, worshipping the mother, like practical, down-to-earth, common sense, white folks living in Britain and other parts of Europe. They knew, there's a document called the Nagamati Texts, which has been found and it's been translated, and the Gnostics talked about the monotheistic religions arriving. Wow. Judeo, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religions that worship a singular male creation figure. Any people that worship a female creation figure, like the earth, or in some First Nations cultures in North America, they worship a grandmother, fire eagle creation spirit. People like this are a problem, all right? So you basically, the way the church came in was they also became the government. Everything they said was law. Right. And so, they say, God is a man. And this also gave men a lot of this idea that men were in charge on earth too. And this led to, millennia of suffering and patriarchal chaos, really, where women have been suffering for a long time. And because of that, men have been suffering too. And so this is a system. Now, the Gnostics knew this was coming, and basically who we were as Anglo-Saxon folks and our traditions, our ceremonies and everything like that got completely eradicated and was completely replaced with Christianity. Now, a lot of us, white folks you know, from that part of Europe. We're growing up here in Australia and New Zealand and all over the place. A lot of us didn't grow up with Christianity either. Maybe our parents did, but we've pretty much grown up with no spiritual culture, zip.
Yeah.
And so we feel like we're just like floating in the wind. And we look at different cultures around the world that have ceremonies and have some kind of spiritual culture, and we kind of grab onto what we can. Oh, wow, that's so amazing. You guys are getting together and you're praying, or you're having these medicines, or you're drumming, or you're fasting, or you're vision questing. Oh, let me in. Because it's all been taken away from us. And there's a massive anxiety there. It's like, well, who am I? Where am I? You know, so there's so much displacement caused by these political systems, especially British royal imperialism for the last 300 years, and churches as well, you know. So
knowing all of that, like, it's really fascinating history as well, and I think it's very relevant to where our discussion is going. However,
ceremonies,
ceremony is really important in the plant medicine thing, because it pulls us back into that, like, as a holotropic or wholesome approach to integrating this into everyday life. But like, what you're talking about here is shifting culture. Ultimately, and doing that with the ceremonies and with the plant medicines and with the therapies, because it's almost like we have to go through the process of resolving our unresolved trauma before we're able to advance to connecting to a higher spirit or our higher consciousness or the next evolutionary progress. And so, if you want to speak to that, what does it look like if we were all like, there maybe a critical mass point, or the masses tuned into this, and whether it was their subconscious leading to it or their conscious mind leading them to heal the trauma, and then to evolve to reach a level of spiritual connection or enlightenment. What does that kind of world look like?
Man. I mean, I'll just touch on the ceremony thing. Like, you know, like, it's, if you are interested in these types of plants or psychedelics and things like that, entheogenics, whatever you want to call them, finding a teacher or finding information to work with so you can help just set yourself up in the right sort of environment. And also working with elders as much as you can, and going to as many ceremonies as you can. And like, for me with facilitation, you know, my main teacher is the plants, but I also work with many different types of ceremonies, and I've developed my own design really with the type of ceremony that I do. So a world changing, man. Like, it's like there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of things that need to move out of the body before we can start to learn and integrate new information. Some people are just so full of toxic information and toxic imagery, like, and that a lot of this can be cleaned out through having plant medicines too. But it really is, we have a massive issue on the planet when it comes to, we really need things to fall apart, really, even more, because we have a pharmaceutical system which is in wedlock with government policy to keep people sick. They are trying to stress the population on purpose, because it makes us, a stressed brain seeks more pleasure and feels more pleasure. There's a great book about it called The Hacking of the American Mind by an endocrinologist, Dr. Lustig. And, you know, so there's so much information out there, but if we're stressed, we are going to be addicted to alcohol and pharmaceuticals and all this kind of thing. So we basically need a political system that is pro-life, not pro-money. Okay? Economics is described as brain damage by Dr. David Suzuki out of Canada. It's like, we've got to remove the economics and stop actually making money out of sickness. Okay? Because then we have a system that is trying to make people sick. Okay? Because we have the technology, we have the know-how to really switch things around, but we need a massive public push. And like in Australia, for example, it's not illegal for pharmaceutical companies to lobby the government to fix the prices on drugs, for example. I have a client, he's addicted to methamphetamine. Oh, hey man, you know, I'm just trying to be a reasonable practitioner. Have you tried Ritalin as a alternative? He's like, oh, it's too expensive. It's just a matter of money. Ritalin should not be more expensive than street meth. You know, simple. But the government is being run by the pharmaceutical companies. There's a fundamental issue there. So a world where people are waking up, they really need, it's a full community thing. You know, it's about doing things in groups, you know, and really changing the government from the bottom up. And so, if you know, in Bali, for example, there's just people just do things together. Like you go around the corner of every little suburb, there's a community centre where they're doing things together and dancing and singing. And there's one place I went to, they're having laughing sessions. They're laughing, let's get together and laugh, you know, like 50 people or dance, whatever. So yeah, so much of that I think, and we really need to change the laws. I mean, so much of these incredible plants that can help us. You can grow yourself, and ingest yourself, and prepare yourself, and share with your friends, share with your community. Also, we're still dealing with the really hardcore principles of fundamental Christian values. You know, if you look, there's a great interview with Dr. Rupert Sheldrake and Russell Brand, where they're discussing some of the political and church system severing your personal access to your own mysticism. Now, so Alan Watts,
taking away these plant medicines that help you connect to that.
Yeah, and so what's mysticism? So Alan Watts, the master philosopher, says mysticism is being sensuously aware through all of your senses with your connection to the entire universe. We're all connected and a part of the entire universe. That means we're all connected to all time and all space and all information. It's all there. But if you take away the plants that help us do this, you can do this if you're really tuning, you get really clear and you're just like on that real full power, clear spiritual level, you can tune in. But for most of us, we need these plants to augment our consciousness, to connect us in this way.
Toxic world.
That's right.
So toxic. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and for listening to this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this series, and if you'd like to listen to the full episode and get more conscious content online, tune into our online video platform at earthheroestv.com. Hope you have a great day, guys, and a huge love from me, and see you next time.